Now you're not going to have to dig around very long in documentation and in people's codes to run across something that's called boxing and unboxing. Now let's talk about that and I'll show you a little example of it. Boxing is the process of storing a value type on the heap instead of on the stack. Now we talked about value types and reference types and how they're stored earlier on in the course, and so now we're talking about manipulating how value types are actually stored. The data, once we box a value type so that we can store it on the heap, the data can then be accessed by reference. This allows a value type to be treated as an object. Now, unboxing is the process of moving that value type back over to the stack off of the heap. Now, what problem does this solve? Well, it solves the problem that's created by having two main species of types in our language, and those are value and reference. Now, that's fundamental to the way our language is built and the way our types are used, so we don't want to change that. However, we can use boxing to change how that value type's treated from time to time. Now, that's not exactly the most efficient way to deal with things. However, prior to generics, it was the only way to use a single argument to work with a value type and a reference type. And keep in mind, boxing has effectively been replaced by generics. However, there are times when boxing just kind of happens and you don't even maybe realize it in your code. And the best way to do that and understand it is to see an example. So notice I've created a Windows Forms application in Visual Studio 2012, and I've entitled this particular solution and project Boxing Example, and you will see a Boxing Example solution out there in your work files folder, so you can go look at this code. But let's look at a simple example of boxing. Now understand, boxing is implicit. Anytime that we put the compiler in a situation of having to move a value type onto the heap, it'll do it for us. However, it won't go back the other way. And the best way to understand this is, again, let's do a little example. So I'm going to create a method that returns an integer, and it'll say add this, but instead of accepting integers, I'm accepting object types. Okay. And then we will just simply return A plus B. Okay. Now, notice it's already given us a problem, and it said the plus can't be assigned to objects of, to objects or to data types of objects. Okay. So we would have to cast that to integer types. Okay, because it's going to be explicit. I have to explicitly cast that. But let me show you what's going to happen here. It's kind of interesting. First thing I want to do is I want to create an integer called answer. And then I want to set answer equal to, I'm going to call add this, and I'm going to send it 3 and 4. Okay, now what's going to be real interesting about this is I'm going to do a message box and just throw up the answer here that I get back. Okay, and so I'll click on start here. And we will run this. I'm passing 3 and 4 in as an object, and it comes back as 7. Okay, now notice to return this, I had to unbox it, if you will. All right. It took the 3 and it passed it in as an object, no problem. Okay. Notice I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to convert that to an integer or tell it for sure that it's an integer to pass it in. Okay. That didn't have to happen. That'll work like that, by the way. We already know it's an integer, but everything seems to work fine, right? But we didn't have to do that because it figured out that, wait a minute, you're passing 2 integers in, okay? And they're going into objects, and that's okay. No problem there, all right? However, once we're trying to return them back as integers, you're going to have to unbox those things. So boxing is implicit. It'll happen automatically, but unboxing is explicit. So the bottom line is this happens a lot when you're working with data types that are value types and sometimes that are reference types. The compiler will implicitly box them and you'll have to unbox them. Anytime you see yourself having to do casts like this, keep in mind you're costing yourself efficiency. It's not the coolest, easiest, best way to go. And if you can get by with using generics, that's going to be a better route for you. Okay. Hope this has helped you understand a little bit about boxing and unboxing. There are times you may want to box a integer or a value type into a reference type to pass it around and do all kind of cool things with it. However, just make sure you understand the cost of casting these back and forth. But anyway, hope that's helped you understand a little bit about boxing and unboxing.